So we were finding our footing and seeing success from the things that we were starting to create in these first few years. There were a lot of like moments that we had that lead up to what we were talking about, where they want to re-sign us and where they say, "Oh, you guys are doing great, we love it," and the ratings that we were seeing as well, because there was this station, this legendary station that had been the big country leader forever, that was starting to slowly come down from its perch,
Yep.
and we were starting to make a dent.
It was old and tired. And
Right.
we were the young, energetic, willing to do whatever it took to build an audience. And that was affected everything that they were doing on the other side of the street for sure.
Yeah, they didn't like, again, I mentioned in previous episodes, they didn't want to like hang out with listeners. They were always in like the back at concerts, and we were up front in front of people on the streets, like just out there working. And there were all these moments in between, the first couple of years that I think were leading to really our success.
Yeah.
Um,
I think there's one in particular that stands out for me, and I don't know what I think it was just my wanting to network or wanting to push the show into something bigger. Syndication was always something that was interesting to me, at least at that point. And so our boss, Steve, at the time, had always talked about this one show in Austin, Texas, and how it was so good, and all the characters were very well defined, and we needed to listen to the show and take some cues from them and what they were doing and all the things. And I remember listening to that show and reaching out to the main host, who everybody very much knows, uh, and asked for mentorship. I don't know if I said, "Hey, can you mentor me?" But it was more like, "Hey, I've got a couple questions. Would love to pick your brain sometime." And, like logistical questions. We're talking like, how do you show prep? How do you share ideas? How do you, how do you have extra help? Like the intern program, all of that kind of stuff was kind of spawned from these conversations that I was having with this guy.
because he was
And
also a show that was syndicated on a bunch of smaller stations as well, so
yeah,
kind of had some of what we were thinking about going on, if I remember correctly. So yeah,
yep.
while we were going through all of this, you were chatting with him.
Yeah, and he was top 40 at the time, so all the pop music, and they had started doing some videos here and there, and we would just talk every once in a while, and then it got a little odd because there was an opening, or a soon to be opening, on our top 40 station in the mornings. Was it MJ? It's so weird that MJ was on the mornings, and because he's a political guy now, right?
He is now, but he used to be part of a legendary morning show, MJ and BJ, that was on in Florida for the longest time. Like on, I think it was FLZ, legendary station, legendary show, like
Yeah.
legendary icons in the business, and they parted ways. And I believe MJ continued, but his show, he did this show, which was syndicated because you had like your Elvis Durans that were like the big top 40 show that were on stations all over from New York to the other coast. And most formats have these now, but they were just really starting to implement them at the time. So that show wasn't on in St. Louis. This other show was after MJ's run ended, because I think MJ wrapped up his top 40 run as a whole, and then he went because he's doing talk radio now. And then this show came on after on KSLZ, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it went it our conversations went from very much like, here's a little tip, here's a little tip, here's a little tip, to, hey, can you do you know any information about this gig? Do you know who they're going to hire? Do you know if they want it to be local? Do you know? And it was just like I didn't feel this at the time because I was viewing everything, literally everything, with rose color glasses, and I was just blinded by everything because I had one thing in mind, and that was to make our show the best that it could possibly be, and to make moves to make it that. And I didn't realize that I was just being pumped for information, essentially, at the time. And could it be just two friends that are just kind of, going back and forth on some information? Sure, but like in the end, it got a little weird there. So, but we had remained friends. We had stopped kind of these Skype calls that we were having. But this will, I guess, play a role. This me reaching out to this person will play a role in our overall career, in good ways and in not so good ways. So,
Yeah,
uh,
I didn't know that this was happening. But I didn't know that Remy was doing this. But this was very much like your style, and you had kind of mentioned that you were so hungry and you were so eager, and for lack of a better term, in green, right? In the time you were
yeah,
new in the industry, you just wanted everybody to know who we are and what we were doing. And I remember when you were like, "Let's network, let's talk to people." I was like, "All these dirty radio people are just going to steal your ideas. Don't talk to them." You know what I mean? They're all shysters, and they're all thieves. Don't talk to. I was definitely speaking from a position of I am and have trust. Like I know what this is. But and in many ways smart. Remy didn't listen to me.
I
So
did not know.
no, but we'll come back to that. You had kind of mentioned reaching out to some folks to for guidance.
Yeah,
Remy and I had our creative differences, so when I kind of was like, "Hey, we should do it like this," I think a lot of the time you were like, "Are you sure that's the only way? Do I have to do what you said? I'd like to maybe have my own input or maybe find another source." I could understand that. That's totally acceptable. But Remy was going other places to talk to other people, which I had advised against. So it probably felt even more right for you to do it. Oh yeah, Mason doesn't want me to do this. I'm going to do this twice.
yeah, yeah. A little bit of a rebellious nature for sure.
But you had the best intentions because you wanted our show to grow. We had these aspirations. We talk about what they can do to grow. They tell you we can put you on a bunch of stations. The company we were working for had 800 radio stations. So how do we do that? We had found other shows that were doing it. One of them being this one that Remy reached out to had like a lot of smaller markets that were coming up and was starting to uh, get into that expansion mode. We wanted to do that. So I feel like you probably had the best of intentions reaching out, going, "How do we do that?"
Hmm.
That's not where we ended up going though, was it?
Not in the long run. We were teased a lot about it, or teased with it, I guess you could say, but that never actually panned out. But yeah, the mentorship turned into something else quickly.
Yeah, we had sites set on like, Nashville. There was a show that was on the air for years there, decades. Jerry House, who was retiring at the time. And then they put on another show afterwards and tried another show and tried another show. And we were like, "Guys, we're seeing success. How do we get there?" And so I think you were trying to find that answer, right?
Hmm.
Initially in looking out. But correct me if I'm wrong, if you just maybe didn't show the door to them.
I cannot correct you. I
Okay.
cannot correct you.
Okay, fair. So here's Remy trying to network. Like what happened in those weeks and months? Because you had said you were reaching out, you were talking with these folks and picking their brain, but then we got a call.
We
Uh,
did.
I don't know
Uh,
if there's anything else we want to go into before that.
I just remember having a very different thought than you about this call. It was the day before the Super Bowl in 2013, correct?
Yep, February 2013. Yeah.
Um, and it was from that point on that everything changed, uh, for better and for worse. But I think, yeah, I think that was the ultimate. Like, I just always have this thought that like everything happens in radio in 3-year increments. Like there's some, if nothing changes, they will make something happen so that something changes. And if you can survive all of those 3-year increments, good for you. If you're you, man, and you survived a lot of 3-year increments, good for you. But for some reason, we always got caught up in those 3-year increments. And uh, yeah. So that call changed everything. I was just happy at that point that we still had a job.
The call that we're talking about,
There he is, the fly.
I'm telling you, only at the most pivotal part. The call that we're talking about is the call that we were not going to be doing mornings anymore. 3 successful, upward climbing years to be shown none of it mattered. A corporate decision happened, but we need you guys to help us make it work. Now, here we are a couple years in, having our contracts renegotiated, probably making the most money of our lives, doing exactly what we wanted to do. And we're being told that we still have a job. We're just not going to do mornings anymore, which is what we wanted. We wanted to do mornings. But they were putting a syndicated show on out of Nashville, which may, bring country music to listeners. And we were just finding out that that's not the route you had to go to actually break through. Remember, our philosophy was not to be so country, but to be so lifestyle. Like we were just in on what was happening in the world, not so much the country world. I think that some folks saw what we were doing and found a way to take that and run with it. I think that in you reaching out to try and say, hey, how can we follow in your footsteps? These folks then took advantage of you being young and naive. And then I may be using the wrong, it seems like a summary that isn't right, but they basically like were stealing the idea that we had to like not necessarily do what we're doing, but go where we wanted to go. We were asking, hey, how do we get there? And the person you asked went there.
Yeah. And I don't think it's until this very moment that I've really put all of that together. I don't know how it was presented to me at the time, and we can get into this in the next episode.
Ooh.
But I don't know how it was presented to me at the time, but I felt somewhat okay with it. I know you felt very differently about that because all you ever wanted to do was mornings. And at this point, I'm starting to build a life, and so are you. House, wife, family on the way, things happening. You know, we're hunkering down, bought a house, all the things, right? And now this upheaval happened, and
Yeah.
the radio industry shows its ugly face at an inopportune moment, I guess.
So a couple of things too on this point. Had they offered this to us, I can't say we wouldn't have jumped at it. You know what I mean? This is the downfall of part of I think the cannibalization of radio is that all of us hate it or hated it when someone took our jobs, but we would have taken those jobs in a heartbeat if it was offered, right? Like if it
We
was
did
something
coming into St. Louis.
right.
Kind of.
Exactly. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're 100% right. We put somebody out of work to take that to come into work. That's how jobs work. But this was a rug pull. This felt very much like a shady situation. And it felt a lot like I don't want to use this as a told you so, but I felt a lot like damn it, why couldn't you listen to me? Like, why didn't you hear what I was saying? This is exactly what we didn't want to happen. But it was there, and this changed me. This changed me as a person because we could not have been more successful than we were in these months. The ratings were there. The revenue was there. We were just on a rise. And the only reason that we lost that momentum is because of a corporate initiative started by somebody who would not have even known if we hadn't called them. Might not have even known. This is like it's a difficult thing to like talk about and because this, like I said, changed me. This is where I learned that no matter, I was always of the mindset, if you work hard and you grind every day, how can they screw you over? They showed me. I learned. Swallow your pride, keep on working, got to pay the bills, want to have a life, like you said. What are we going to do? Walk away from the money, from the career? a lot of people say the only things you can control are how you react to things. So we tried our best to be, still somewhat new in the company and still knowing like, hey, there'll be other opportunities. Maybe this one isn't it, right? We tried the best to put on a good face. And we moved to afternoons. I specifically remember that Super Bowl, like being invited over to a Super Bowl party of the general manager and going, what the hell am I doing right now? Why am I
Mhm.
here? I only want to throw middle fingers at everyone in this room. Um, but swallowed it down and continued to do the work. We worked in the afternoon for a while. Um, I don't know how much more. I know we're getting long on this episode. I don't know how much more we want to dive into here because we've really revealed a lot of what was happening at this time. We had had a lot of success, and for whatever reason, for lack of a better summary, our own company shot us in the foot. Um, in the name of something bigger than us. And from what I understand, millions of dollars in lost revenue at the time.
Mhm.
I remember we had so many deals going with businesses in the morning that by losing us in the morning, we were essentially losing revenue for the company. This decision was disputed, and they said, "I doesn't matter." They cut a line. Stations at this level and below are all getting this show, and we were at that level.
Yeah.
Like St. Louis started here, and then it
Yeah.
was all the cities underneath it.
I remember I think what made it better was that we did have a job, or how I justified it in my mind is that we did keep our job, but there were at least 12 to 15 morning shows that were just cut,
Mhm.
gone in a
That's
day.
fair. Yeah, yeah, that day that it was announced, there were morning shows that were just let go, that were just off into the ether, had to find another job, had to land somewhere else, shows that broke up. These things happen a lot in radio. Um, but it's never to somebody you thought you were making friends with, which is what I think made me the most mad. Second was that you had to do it. First was that I feel like they took advantage of you being young and green and naive and took your idea and ran with it. But then second was that, oh man, I wish you'd have listened. But I also understand why you wouldn't listen to me. It's
Yeah.
definitely I can't say I'm the smartest guy in the world and I've made mistakes. So I can understand why. And you want to carve out your own path. So I don't fault you for it on these days, like when we're here living it, talking about it. In those days, I very much was very upset. But I think you understood having like seen it. Maybe you say you're only now maybe piecing it all together, but like I felt like I didn't need to say anything after that about it, although I probably did. Um, I think I knew that you knew what had happened. And we were just there going, we were going to keep rolling. So this might be a good place to wrap up this episode because we'll have a lot more to talk about that. But essentially, you reached out to someone to try and grow, and I feel like that you were preyed upon in that moment, and that made me mad. Um, so where did we go from there? How did we handle doing afternoons? How did we end up doing mornings on KLOU? How did we end up doing mornings and afternoons? How to have been done? What? This doesn't make sense, but it
What is
happened.
happening?
It's just it was so weird. And the Taylor Swift thing, how we got in big trouble with Taylor Swift. We're going to talk about it. We'll talk about those things. Um, and really how that loss of what we felt was the biggest thing we'd ever had led to the biggest thing we would ever have, our biggest opportunity, even bigger than what we had already thought was our biggest. How we ended up in Chicago in the next episode. It's been a good conversation. I hope you are enjoying it. If you're watching this, I hope you're feeling all right, Remy, as we go through it and relive it. I hope I'm not opening up any wounds.
No.
Everything all
I
right?
think that this has clarified so many things. Like it's clarified the timeline for me. It's if there's one thing I like to do, it's compartmentalize and put things in little boxes and neat little rows. And this podcast has done a lot of that. So I look forward to continuing, even though I feel like in the next several episodes, it gets tougher to talk about some of the stuff.
It probably will. But to know that we end up back here is the happy ending that we all know is coming. But it's the journey. It's the friends we made along the way and the enemies as well.